modern reflections, and ongoing legacy. Today, neurodiversity frameworks connect historical ableism in slavery Jim Crow to contemporary abolitionist movements, for example, prison abolition, defunding police, arguing that neurodivergent people, disproportionately policed or institutionalized, benefit from dismantling carceral systems rooted in racial control. Black autistic advocates like Morenike Giwa Onaiwu emphasize intersectionality, noting how Jim Crow's legacy persists in autism misdiagnosis rates. Black children are underdiagnosed due to racial bias. The impact thus evolves. Retrospective recognition honors overlooked contributions while fueling current fights for equity. In summary, while autism Asperger's had no named role in these eras, possible neurodivergent figures like Banneker provided intellectual ammunition for abolition, and traits like focus aided civil rights resilience. The true historical thread is mutual reinforcement of racism and ableism, with liberation efforts often sidelining disabled voices. In the final analysis of autism or Asperger's history, what is a good way to end this series? How involved autism or Asperger's in professional sports? How does the alt-right deal with autism or Asperger's? How does the alt or dissident left deal with autism or Asperger's? What influence does autism or Asperger's have in brony culture? What influence does autism or Asperger's have in weeb culture? What influence does autism or Asperger's have in Western movies and animations? What influence does autism or Asperger's have in furry culture? What influence does autism or Asperger's have on 4chan and hacking subculture? What influence does autism or Asperger's have in geek culture overall? The history of autism and Asperger's syndrome, from early pathologizing in the 1940s under figures like Leo Kanner and Hans Asperger, whose Nazi-era ties complicate his legacy, through the deinstitutionalization era, to the DSM-5's 2013 merger into autism spectrum disorder, reflects a profound shift from viewing neurodivergence as a tragic deficit to a natural variation worthy of celebration. This evolution, accelerated by the neurodiversity movement since the 1990s, emphasizes self-advocacy, intersectionality, and systemic accommodations over cures. A fitting way to end this series is with a forward-looking reflection. As we enter an era of AI-assisted diagnostics, inclusive policies, and global awareness, the future lies in empowering autistic voices to dismantle ableism, fostering societies where neurodiversity drives innovation and equity. This isn't just history, it's a blueprint for belonging, reminding us that every eccentric mind has shaped our world, from historical abolitionists to modern coders. Involvement of autism or Asperger's in professional sports. Autism and Asperger's are underrepresented in professional sports due to social and sensory demands, but several high-profile athletes have openly identified as autistic, leveraging hyperfocus and pattern recognition as strengths. Their stories challenge stereotypes, showing how accommodations like routine-based training can enable elite performance. Here's a table of notable examples. Athlete achievements. How autism influenced their journey. Tony Snell basketball, NBA, 10+ seasons with teams like Milwaukee Bucks. 2014 NBA champion diagnosed at 31. Credits hyperfocus for defensive skills. Advocates for late diagnoses in athletes. Clay Marzo surfing pro surfer since age 11. Multiple wins on World Surf League circuit. Uses special interests in waves for intense training. Sensory sensitivities managed via ocean immersion. Jessica Jane Applegate swimming, Paralympics, 7-time Paralympic medalist for GB Asperger's diagnosis. Thrives on routine laps, turns social challenges into team motivation. Jim Eisenreich baseball, MLB, 15-year career with Royals Yankees. 1990 World Series Tourette's autism overlap, managed tics through focus rituals, retired as advocate. John Howard MMA fighting pro since 2004. Multiple UFC bouts. Autistic traits aid strategic analysis. Uses fights for sensory regulation. Speculation around figures like Lionel Messi, for example, repetitive rituals, highlights broader potential, but confirmed cases emphasize resilience over savant tropes. How the alt-right deals with autism or Asperger's. The alt-right's engagement with autism is ambivalent and exploitative, often invoking weaponized autism, a 4chan-originated term praising autistic hyperfocus for doxing or meme warfare, while demeaning individuals as socially inept autists unworthy of empathy. This reflects fascist undertones. Hans Asperger's Nazi collaborations, for example, eugenics referrals, are sometimes whitewashed or celebrated in far-right circles as high-functioning Aryan traits, tying into Aspie supremacy narratives that frame autism as a superior anti-normie intellect. Autistic men are recruited via online grievances, for example, incel overlaps, but radicalization risks are overstated without causal links, per experts. It's more about vulnerability to echo chambers than inherent traits. Overall, it's a tool for ideology, not genuine inclusion. How the alt or dissident left deals with autism or Asperger's. The dissident/alt left, for example, anti-capitalist, anti-establishment progressives, largely embraces neurodiversity as an egalitarian framework, viewing autism as a resistance to conformity and a critique of neuronormative capitalism. Autistic traits like systematic thinking align with left-wing fairness ideals, fostering spaces for anti-oppression organizing. However, critiques arise. Some see co-opting by mainstream left, for example, using autism for identity politics, as performative, while historical Nazi links to Asperger fuel anti-fascist vigilance. Unlike the alt-right's exploitation, this side prioritizes accommodations and intersectionality, though ableism persists in high-functioning biases. Influence of autism or Asperger's in brony culture. Brony fandom, adult fans of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, has a strong autistic overlap, with many citing the show's structured morals, vibrant aesthetics, and low-stakes social lessons as therapeutic for sensory and relational challenges. Autism provides a gateway. Hyper-focus on lore builds community, while escapism aids masking fatigue. Groups like Asperger's Bronies United foster inclusion, turning stigma into pride. Ponies symbolize autistic special interests as superpowers. This influence humanizes fandom, challenging weird tropes. Influence of autism or Asperger's in weeb culture. Weeb otaku culture, fans of anime, manga, video games, attracts autistics via immersive worlds that reward pattern-seeking and deep dives, offering escapism from social overload. Traits like sensory engagement, for example, vibrant visuals, and relatable outsider protagonists, coded autistic per lists, create belonging. Autism influences creation too. Otaku stereotypes stem from 1980s Japanese autism awareness, fostering global communities where weirdness is normalized. Influence of autism or Asperger's in Western movies and animations. Autism shapes Western media through authentic characters and creators, evolving from stereotypes, Rain Man's savant, to nuanced portrayals that boost empathy but risk inaccuracy. Autistic writers, directors, for example in Atypical, infuse sensory details and internal monologues, while shows like Arthur, Carl's Asperger's Arc, educate youth. Influence includes diverse reps, for example, Love on the Spectrum. Though male white bias persists, it drives advocacy for better casting. Influence of autism or Asperger's in furry culture. Furry fandom boasts high autistic prevalence, up to 20 to 30% self-reported versus 1 to 2% general, drawn by creative expression, animal proxies for identity, and convention comforts like fursuits, which buffer sensory input and enable low-pressure socializing. Autism enhances world-building, for example, detailed personas, and reduces anxiety, turning masking into playful performance. Barriers like overcrowding exist, but it's a net positive haven. Influence of autism or Asperger's on 4chan and hacking subcultures. On 4chan, autism is memed as weaponized, a double-edged sword celebrating obsessive skills, for example, raid coordination, while mocking as cringeworthy autism. In hacking, autistic traits like system analysis fuel prowess, for example, 2/3 of hackers score high on autism quotients, but stereotypes portray them as asocial script kiddies. Influence enables anonymous innovation, but reinforces isolation. Influence of autism or Asperger's in geek culture. Overall, geek nerd culture and autism share deep ties. Geek syndrome, Silicon Valley autism surge, frames shared traits like intense interests and social quirks as evolutionary assets for tech creativity. Autism drives subcultures, comics, gaming via hyperfocus. But the Aspie geek stereotype harms by implying all autistics are nerdy or vice versa, ignoring diversity. Positively, it builds inclusive spaces like Comic-Con panels on neurodiversity. As we reach the end of our exploration, it's clear that autism's influence extends far beyond niche communities or pop culture. In politics, autistic voices are increasingly shaping policy debates. Advocacy for neurodiversity rights challenging stereotypes in public office. Online, the internet has become both a refuge and a battleground. Autistic creators find camaraderie and visibility, but also face unique challenges in the fast-paced, often unforgiving world of social media. Looking even further back, some historians and psychologists speculate that neurodivergent thinkers may have quietly shaped pivotal moments in human history, fueling scientific revolutions, artistic breakthroughs, new ways of seeing the world. While these connections are complex and sometimes controversial, they invite us to reconsider what society values as intelligence, creativity, leadership. Ultimately, the story of autism is not one of isolation, but of connection. Threaded through politics, internet culture, the deep currents of human progress. As awareness grows, so does the hope for a future where neurodiversity is not just accepted, but celebrated as a vital force in shaping the world we share. On September 22, 2025, Donald Trump, flanked by HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., claimed at a White House press conference that prenatal Tylenol use causes autism, citing studies and announcing new FDA guidance. He urged, "Don't take Tylenol," linking it to an autism epidemic and referencing vaccine and cultural myths. These claims are deeply problematic and unsubstantiated. While some studies note correlations, experts agree no causal link exists. Major reviews, including a 2025 assessment, find acetaminophen unlikely to increase autism risk, and withholding it could endanger pregnancies. Medical organizations and Tylenol's manufacturer called the claims dangerous fear-mongering, echoing past debunked vaccine autism rhetoric. This episode highlights how political narratives can distort science, risking public health for ideology. Since the mid-2000s, 4chan has shaped online autism discourse through memes, stigma, and ironic pride. The term autist began as a slur for obsessive posters, evolving into weaponized autism, a backhanded compliment for relentless meme warfare and data dumps. Threads speculated on historical figures and promoted supremacist memes, fueling alt-right recruitment and internalized ableism. While some reclaimed autism with pride, 4chan remains a toxic echo chamber, with high autistic user base and little nuance beyond memes. To close, let's trace autism's arc from ancient roots to modern neurodiversity. Autism's genetic foundations predate humans, supporting solitary foraging and pattern recognition in early animals. In human evolution, these traits aided survival, innovation, and art. Throughout history, societies alternately valued and stigmatized neurodivergence, from revered holy fools to pathologized idiots. Modern science reframes autism as a natural variation, not a modern epidemic. The story of autism is one of survival, stigma, and strength, a tapestry of adaptation and resilience. As we end this series, remember, neurodiversity is an evolutionary gift, and diverse minds drive progress. Goodbye and stay curious.